Welcome to episode 162 of the Grip Strip Podcast, the Demo Derby Road Course edition of the Grip Strip Podcast. My name is Philip Matthew. I'm your host, and my co-host, an iRacing Indy 500 champion, a computer genius, a gentleman, and a scholar. His name is Josh Fine. What's going on, brother?
Hey, I'm doing great, Phil. Of course, a lot happened this weekend at COTA and NASCAR. A lot to talk about there, which we'll get into. Of course, there's probably only a handful of drivers who are iRacing, champions of some kind, where they're maybe not Indy 500. I don't think many of them are a gentleman or a scholar, and maybe only a few of them are a computer genius. So maybe I'm better than half of those guys. I probably wouldn't have wrecked any of those guys that wrecked it on Sunday, except for Tyler Reddick, who won the Cup race on Sunday at COTA.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we're working on merch. I get what you're doing there because Grid Talk has merch, so Grip Strip has to get merch going eventually. Hopefully sooner rather than later. I'll have some time we can go and figure that out. But wait for that for all the listeners that actually do get download and all that. We're gonna have some Grip Strip, and we'll have those sayings kind of like the Brad and Kyle channel for bowling. And I'm wearing my Packy shirt for Packy Hanrahan after his first career PBA title last week in Kokomo, and this week they're doing the USBC Masters. So it's going to be a tough week qualifying, trying to get in, make the TV show. So it's going to be interesting. But yeah, NASCAR was at COTA this week, and Tyler Reddick dominated. It was basically him and Will Byron the whole entire race. And outside of that, there was a lot of destruction and a lot of stupidity. In the Xfinity race, AJ Allmendinger cleaned out Sheldon Creed and won the Xfinity race to repeat there, and then cried wolf when it happened to him. Then in the Truck Series race, it was Zane Smith repeating and Front Row Motorsports continuing their unbeaten streak in the Truck Series at that racetrack. And he went and, as a bonus, caught his truck on fire after doing burnouts, which was pretty cool. So I don't think it's as cool for Chris Lawson and the whole crew because they're having to repair everything, but he started a fire. So I think that was one of the more interesting things about that truck race because otherwise it's pretty awful. So we'll get into all that at COTA. The roundup is busy. We'll talk about MotoGP and Moto2, which took place at Portimao last week for the season opener, and they'll be in Argentina this week. IndyCar actually is looking at that circuit to possibly go and run a race in the future. The Arizona Nationals, possibly for the last time for the NHRA, saw different winners this past weekend and a first-time winner in Pro Stock. Supercross at Seattle, Eli Tomac gets a historic 50th victory to tie James Bubba Stewart for second all-time or third all-time in wins, I think, or second all-time. You got to check that. Sao Paulo E-Prix for Formula One or Formula E. They race there, and they'll have a break going a month or so before they go to Germany for their doubleheader there. We'll preview F2 and F3 at Albert Park. First time they'll ever be there in Australia. And with that, you also have the supercars coming back for their second race of the season. And they'll run four different races during the weekend. So that'll be interesting. We will give you previews and picks of the IndyCar, XPEL 375 or whatever the hell they're calling it, at the dump that is Texas Motor Speedway. And then the Australian Grand Prix preview and picks, which probably I'm not going to be able to see because I'm going to have a busy weekend and it's so late. Cup and Xfinity will be at Richmond, and Trucks will be at Texas as the precursor to the IndyCar race. Josh will let us know all things going on in the world of sim racing, iRacing, and other games since IndyCar's game has been delayed, amongst other things. So kind of getting the IndyCar fan base riled up. When wouldn't it be? And we'll close the deal. So, yeah, we get into the Echo Park Automotive Grand Prix at Circuit of the Americas. There was a cast of thousands announcing yesterday. Kurt Busch was the only one that really made sense. He was emotional because he saw his car win. Tyler Reddick led 41 laps, 6 times for 41 laps, and took the victory. Had to fight off I don't know how many different restarts because of the ridiculousness. Probably that third stage took 2 hours. I have no idea. I went to watch it somewhere, and the third stage it was okay, and then I knew that the carnage was going to start, and then that just became an abomination. All these people running over each other. I mean, it's so stupid how people drive anymore. I mean, you can tell some of these guys have no clue and have no business driving a cup car the way they drive into each other. But battle was basically between pole sitter William Byron and outside pole sitter Tyler Reddick. You had 69 of the 75 laps were led by both of those drivers. William Byron now is in the plus category in playoff points after losing a lot of his playoff points from that penalty. Of course, it's pending the appeal here that's coming up later this week, so we'll probably be able to talk about it next week on the show. We'll get into the results of the race before we go and get into more detail. Tyler Reddick gets the victory. First victory for 2311 as a driver. First victory for Toyota. I believe it's their first victory of the year, right? Or am I wrong? I don't remember them winning because I know
Chevy victory
Chevy
of the year. Chevy won the first 4, and then Ford last week with Logano.
Ford won, with Logano. Okay, that's all right. So I'm all right. Good, thank you. Kyle Busch, the driver now of the 8 car, taking over for Tyler Reddick, finished second. Alex Bowman third. Ross Chastain fourth. William Byron finishes fifth. What could have been is what he's wondering, even though another top 5 finish. Dude is having the best start of his Cup Series career. Gumby Cindric sixth. Richard gets his first career top 10 on a road course. That is a hellscape. Christopher Buescher eighth. Keebler Gibbs ninth. And Todd Gilliland gets a top 10 for Front Row Motorsports. Corey LaJoie continuing his great start to the year, just kind of surviving, finishing 11th. He is on the bump spot right now in the points for the playoffs. So, I mean, obviously it's early in the year, but Michael McDowell, who I'd picked in one of my pools that I'm in, came back to finish 12th. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of guys that were involved in stuff. I mean, we can get into those things later, but the initial takeaway is it was a 2-horse race. I think in practice, it was pretty evident that Tyler Reddick was in a rocket, and it was more about how not to screw it up, and it almost happened. Billy Scott put him on a 3-stop strategy, which could have went sideways, but with all the caution that started happening in the third stage, they came back. It came back to where he was able to get back on sequence, and then it was a mano-a-mano fight between him and William Byron, and Tyler Reddick was able to hold up there, Josh. Byron continues to show why he is one of the early favorites right now in the Cup Series, even with all the points he lost through that penalty. He is having the best start to his Cup Series career right now. Yes, he lost 100 points, but right now he's 22nd in points, and only Bowman is ahead of him outside of his teammates. I mean, Kyle Larson's 27th. Clyde, of course, hasn't run, and I don't know if he really said when he's coming back, and he's 32nd. I don't know about the owner points, to be fair, but He's got 4 playoff points. He's got 2 wins, so he's locked in either way. There's no rule you have to be in the top 20 or whatever in points, so he'll get there. He's running well enough. So, yeah, it was between those two guys, and then we can definitely get into the argy bargy that took place outside of those two guys, Josh.
Yeah, of course, but I think, for Reddick, he continues to show why he's really good at road course racing in general. Go back to last year, how well he was able to race in his 2 wins at Road America and at the Indy Road Course. And kind of going back to the Indy Road Course, I mean, he had a really good restart, towards the end of the race and was able to calmly just get back into the lead. And, here at Coda yesterday, he didn't start out front after pitting under caution towards the end, and he was able to get back to the lead, you know, well, before they got to the fastest part of the racetrack. So, I think for Reddick, shows just how well, how good he is, but not only how good he is, but also how well of a car that they had put together for that race. And, he was able to show just how good of a, car he had, was really excellent under braking. He just knew how to get the most out of his car. Under braking, he could outbrake most of the drivers. I think Byron maybe had a little bit more horsepower, which makes sense. Hendrick has always been known for horsepower in their cars and their engines, and maybe a couple of times where Byron had the lead, he was able to pull away from down the straights from Tyler Reddick, but Reddick was just able to be better throughout the corners, and I think that's what set him apart from everybody. That's how he was able to get such a big lead, during the green flag portions of the race. And I think being able to have such a big lead, I think also afforded them to be able to go on that 3-stop strategy that I think that they were gonna have until all the cautions started happening. And when you have that freedom to do that because you're so far ahead and you can pit and not lose a lap or lose so much time, you can do that and get build even a bigger lead, because you have more grip than somebody that's trying to save on 2 tires or on 2 stops or anything like that. And it's getting interesting though because of the fuel situation. I mean, they were on a 3-stop strategy, but then before the last caution, well, not the last caution, but caution happened with 12 laps ago. Brad Keselowski slowed in the grass and everything and stopped there. But before that, it was setting up to be an incredible finish fuel wise. Reddick was having to save, Byron was having to save, and the other guys were potentially close on fuel, and that was going to be interesting to see what they were going to happen to them. Would any of them run out of gas? And we're kind of seeing kind of an old school finish, if you want to look at it like that. I mean, compared to pre 2017 stage racing NASCAR, we hadn't really seen any race that didn't have any pre-planned cautions, and I think that was also part of what made that up to that point, what made it very unique and everything, and what made it enjoyable. Of course, the argy-bargy, like you said, happening with all the restarts after that. And I mean, on one hand, NASCAR calling cautions because of the debris, because tires shredded, parts all over the place. But then on the other hand, drivers, running into each other, being, ultra aggressive on restarts, dive bombing into turn one, going, 5 wide into turn one at Coda, which, it's incredible to see on one hand, but on the other hand, drivers getting spun out in the middle of that, looking like an eye in the storm of a hurricane. It's kind of interesting why they're able to do that. One, trying to get the most points, the other trying to just get up to the front, potentially maybe steal a win or get points, stage points. Even there was no stage cautions, they still had the stage points. So various reasons why they run deep into the restart and box people out of the way throughout the S's, throughout the stadium section. So there's definitely a lot of issues there with that, and I mean it's a problem. Talk about super speedway racing, road course racing, short track racing, no matter what. When we have cars packed together, close together like that, and there's lots of restarts, drivers just throw out all respect out the window and do whatever they can to get positions and anything, and they're able to do that, which I think NASCAR needs to figure out a way to get respect back into the system, whether or not that's through different restart procedures or something. They maybe start penalizing drivers outright for too aggressive driving. Probably a good percent of the field that probably deserved a penalty for that. Of course, there's the issue of what the balls and strikes and stuff like that, and they want to get in the middle of that. Um, then there's the other hand of they could. I mean, Danny suggested this on his podcast earlier, being able to, I guess, move or modify the restart zone. And I mean, I'll take that even further and say that when the pace car pulls into pit road, the leader takes off immediately, and I would do that. I mean, that's my opinion. I'll get into it later in iRacing because that's how I feel. But I think if you take off once the pace car pulls in, then the leader. I mean, even though they have an advantage, they're able to drive away and everything. It reduces the amount of stack up that happens, off of a restart, especially at a slow corners, heavy braking zone like we see at turn one at Coda. So that's my opinion and everything. And the other fact is, the drivers don't really respect each other anymore, and they haven't really for a long time. And part of it is because the system NASCAR has with the winning, you're in playoffs, chase, whatever, stage racing points, all that stuff. But then I think the other part of it is that drivers know that they're able to just bump into each other and continue on for the most part. Tire gets shredded here and there, but for the most part, with these cars, you just bump into them, you know, pretty easily, and you can keep going, no damage. So maybe that's another part of it. So there's a lot of factors that go into the type of racing that we see, and it's pretty reflective, I think, in how bad it actually is when you have guys from other series like Kimi, Jensen Button, Jordan Taylor, like we talked about top of the show, saying like it's really bad. Jensen, look, I mean, he's heat exhaustion and all that stuff, but then I think just looked like he was bewildered at just the fact that he had to race so aggressively. Kimi called it bumper cars. Jordan Taylor, I think he was just shocked at just how much contact that there was. And I think when you have three guys like that, I think it should change everybody who say things like that. It should change their perspective for the regulars. So, I mean, it is what it is at the end of the day, and maybe it'll resolve itself in the future. But I think can't really wait until the next road course race for us to see if people race like that. I think you got to, start it now. Starting at Richmond, starting at the Bristol Dirt Race, Talladega, Martinsville, etc. So we go from there. And I mean, if this race took a long time to go, to the end like that, imagine how it's going to be when they have the Chicago street course race and everything. I mean, that track, the layout is pretty big as well. So, there's a lot to consider there as far as, time length wise for cautions on road courses. So, yeah, I mean, I said a lot and everything. So, there's a lot to take away from that race. But, at the end of the day, drivers have to have better standards and everything. And I mean, honestly, it was looking like one of the best races in the last couple of years, just simply because of the fact that we actually had a race play out naturally, like other series, how racing is supposed to be, and like what you had with stage racing. But then, drivers ruined it at the end by going out and causing a bunch of cautions at the end.
Yeah, and they look like monkeys fucking footballs is what it is. I mean, great stuff there, man. A lot to dive into on my end. I mean, the we brought it up prior to the show. We were talking, and I mean the way NASCAR. I mean, I've said this. I don't know how many times on this show. I said it on on other shows I've been on. NASCAR, they have all these road courses, yet they do not know how to go and officiate road course races. They do not know what a local yellow is. They could have cut I don't know how many yellows out of there just by calling a local yellow. They have virtual safety cars in Formula One, and they're faster vehicles. They're rocket. They're basically upside down airplanes. They're rocket ships. They have virtual safety cars. It's 2023. like I get the BS back in the 90s and the 80s when it was Bumble F or whatever, but even in the 80s and the 90s, they didn't even call the amount of cautions that they do now. They just do it just for the sake of doing it. I
They
think in
had
a lot of
local
cases.
cautions in the 90s too. That's the funny part.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was when Bob, Benny, and Ned would be. They'd have they'd have Benny in one part of the track and Ned in one other part. Like when they're at Snoroma, Ned Jarrett would be over there by the hairpin, the one hairpin, and then Benny would be in the suites at the final turn, and they would go and announce, but they had local yellows. They'd let the race work organically. In this day and age in NASCAR, they just want to make it a circus. And I mean, you had Gunther Steiner in there, and even he was uh, perplexed and by it. But then he also was one of the team principal of the Red Bull Cup team, I think, or one of the big up guys back in the day. The absolute lack of respect, it's true. I mean, some of these people just absolutely, like Keebler Gibbs is a great example, and he was guilty of a couple of them yesterday at least. I mean, Daniel Suarez lost his mind, tried to run over his own teammate, and then went after Alex Bowman. I mean, to be fair, Alex Bowman's kind of a peckerhead. He drives like that a lot, and then he does the whole "woe is me" routine, and and then and then they went after Bubba about it. And now Suarez has gotten pissed too because I mean, he's just kind of a douche anyway. But I mean, I'll go through a lot of this stuff here. So yeah, Dylan ran over Jimmy Johnson. They didn't even finish a lap. So they were out. Bubba Wallace, it's different things. I think he had a oil line come off,
Yeah, I thought he
and
had like a
then
mechanical failure and then
yeah,
dive bombed into Larson.
yeah, I figured that's exact because then for the Larson zealots who want to complain about it, he did the exact same thing and ran over Ty Dillon at Indianapolis because his brakes failed and he just literally T-boned Ty Dillon going into turn one. So it's the exact same thing. Bubba did it, but then in true Bubba fashion, he goes like full bore into himself and blaming himself when, to be honest, it was probably his best road course performance of his career. I mean, in a cup car for sure. I don't know. I can't really remember uh, anything he did in a road course in an Xfinity or truck anyway, or maybe they weren't running him as much back then anyway. But he was so hard on himself; it was pretty bad there. I mean, Connor Daly's car was a piece of shit, so that was like a start and park. He probably wishes they could have replaced the transmission. He probably would have gotten the top 20 with that piece of garbage. Um, Brad Keselowski had a drive shaft failure, which kind of, like Josh said, it was lap 58. So I think the scheduled distance was
68.
64 laps, right? Or
68 laps.
68 laps. Okay, so that was with 10 to go in the scheduled distance, and that's when it went to hell because one, they don't know what a local yellow is. They keep on doing this. It's a 3.1 mile racetrack. They do it at Road America, and it's mind numbing. It's like, how the fuck do you not have local yellows? How do you not have a virtual safety car system or something where you have the goddamn digital screens? You got to go and say, "Oh, local yellow, slow down in this section so we can go and get the debris and keep the race going." I mean, it's freaking 101, racing 101, but it's NASCAR. It's more like WWE.
Yeah.
AJ Outer Allmendinger, he hit some people and then he got wrecked. Austin Dillon was actually running well on a road course, which was amazing. But then he got cleaned out. Ryan Preece got absolutely murdered. His whole entire car looked like a cluster, and I think Keebler Gibbs ran over him. Uh, and then what is it? Almirola got cleaned out. He got cleaned out a couple of times. Chris Bell was running up front the whole day, and then he got cleaned out.
By
Kimi
Logano.
Räikkönen, yeah, Logano, yeah, that's right. Logano was on an alternate strategy and it didn't work out. He finished 28th. Kimi Räikkönen, he got spun. I don't know by who. I don't remember because you can't keep track of all these damn wrecks because like 3/4 of the field was wrecked. Um, and then Suarez was about to rage and go and get into a lucha libre battle with his. He was going to go and do a 2-on-1 match against freaking Chastain and Bowman. Uh, Weapons, put the mask on, the whole bit. He was about to go and do that. Jordan Taylor, the look on his face says it all. The guy had one of the fastest race cars in the whole place. He proved it during Friday and Saturday, and literally on the initial start, that shit sailed real quick, and he's like, "Oh damn, I signed up for the wrong deal here." And it only got worse as it went along. He had a great race car. He knows he had a great race car, and he was doing the best he could to learn on the fly. And the restarts were what got him, the same way as with all the other uh, ringers that came in for this race. Eric Jones was in the top 10, fell back. I mean, Gagson started in the top 10 and was up there, probably, I'm assuming, wrecked. Blaney had to make up multiple laps because he got destroyed earlier in the race.
He got destroyed by Larson.
He got destroyed by Larson, and Larson ends up. What's the irony is Larson got destroyed by whatever, the 23 and the 11. Then he goes and destroys the 12 car, and he has multiple laps down. He finishes 14th. I mean, that's ridiculous. Jenson Button did get a top 20, 18th place, so one of the better runs for that organization in general, even though he was about to quit, which is crazy for a Formula One world champion, somebody who's in the peak of fitness. Probably tells you there's some things wrong with that car. No shit. I mean, we've been going through those same problems since the start of last year. Haley cleaned out Chase Briscoe, and then he got cleaned out. I wish Briscoe would have done it. It would have been better. Briscoe was running into the top 10 and then fell back late in those restarts. McDowell did get spun out there. Hamlin, I think, got wrecked on one of them times because it's so weird to look at that dang 11 car and it be an Interstate Batteries car. It's so disconcerting. The Interstate Batteries car is the 18 car. That's what it should be, but there is no 18 car anymore. I'm trying to go through all of these here. I mean, LaJoy kind of just driving around all day, kind of like Todd Gilliland, and they benefited. Richard got wrecked at least once yesterday and still got a top 10 out of it. Feel like Buescher was involved in something along with Cindric. Chastain, as usual, along with Bowman, being darts without feathers. I mean, that's the vast majority of the field was just look like idiots. And I mean, the notion is Snoroma, they don't go fast enough for it and it's too narrow. But last year at Indianapolis was the same exact thing. It was a total disaster and they looked ridiculous. They're going back there again for that race this year. And the idea you had, Josh, about literally when the pace car goes off to go, that's better than having them packed up and doing all that. I'd rather have that.
I do that in iRacing because, like whenever I have the lead in iRacing, like since the pace car pulls in, I take off, and usually it works. And that's just the whole idea. I mean, the idea is because, like, at least in IndyCar, like on ovals, I mean, I don't probably need to go back and look at a road course restart or start, but they usually take off like once they're on the front stretch and able to separate the field, because we know what happens if they all got bunched up together. And I think the idea in NASCAR, at least on road courses or even other tracks, like if they take off once the pace car pulls into the pit lane, like go and spread everybody out.
Yeah, and that would definitely help on road courses for sure. Depending on the oval, because I was thinking about it with restarts and how they do them, and also with the stages and not throwing cautions for stages. I think they can't do it on those big tracks because they need to bring them back together, like Michigan, Pocono. So I think that wouldn't be such a bad idea because then the strategy would really come back into it. Um, I think maybe doing it at North Wilkesboro for the All-Star race would be an idea, to kind of R&D it, because that's usually where they R&D different ideas. Um, it would be great at Richmond this weekend, because then tire wear and tire dag, fuel mileage would come back into it like it used to be, because the track generally has stunk for years, whether it's the car, the way it's the pavement, whatever. It's just been a bad combination. So I think the new aero setup will help. Yeah, so I mean, it's just, I mean, I hate this. I'll be on this hill until the end of time. But somebody needs to. I'm available. I'll work in the freaking booth during the race, and literally say, or come up. I'll work with somebody. We have the grid talk people. We can all come up with an idea to where you have warning lights or whatever. Run a local yellow. You have to slow down in that area. They do it in freaking Supercross, and guys wipe themselves out from like 50 feet, and they go and basically kill themselves. And they'll put blocks around them so they can work with the rider to make sure that they're stable and they can get them off the track. They do it live in the race. You literally have to roll through the section. The fuck can't you do it in NASCAR unless you're just trying to make it as a WWE? I mean, that's literally what it is. All right. So the points after the race here at COTA, Ross Chastain retakes the points lead uh, from Joey Logano. He has a 19-point edge on Kyle Busch. And Joey Logano is third, tied with Kevin Harvick. Christopher Bell rounds out the top five. Blaney is sixth. Gumby is seventh. That Truax kid from Mayetta, New Jersey, is eighth. Brad Keselowski, ninth. Tyler Reddick, with his win, moves up five positions in points and is tied with Denny Hamlin, his car owner, 10th and 11th there, and you're only a point behind Keselowski. Richard is in 12th. Buescher, Suarez, and Corey LaJoie is the bump, because William Byron has won 2 races this year. So that's I'm trying to 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. So those are the drivers right now that are into 16. Right on the outside is Alex Bowman. He's 13 points behind Corey LaJoie. Michael McDowell, 14 points. And Keebler is 21 points behind. So Bubba Wallace lost 3 positions with his DNF. Allmendinger lost 3 spots in points as well. So rough day, considering AJ Allmendinger lives for these road courses and didn't get anything out of it. The Stewart-Haas guys outside of Kevin Harvick are a disaster. I mean, even though Briscoe got a top 15 finish, he's still mired in 23rd. He's behind William Byron now, who gained 6 spots in points with his top 5 finish. Gilliland is only a point behind him, and he had to drive the 15 car once. Austin Dillon showing once again how talented he is. Gagson showing how depressed he is having to drive for Legacy Motor Club. I mean, it's not like Eric Jones he's only a few positions ahead of him. The 10 and the 41 are 28th and 29th in points. They're behind Kyle Larson, who had a 100-point penalty. It's pathetic. It's just awful. God awful. I mean, Ty Dillon really shouldn't be driving a cup car anymore. I think we've gotten to the point where he needs to do something else. He's god awful. I mean, it's not just the fact that he drives for Spire and they're not even trying with that car, but dude just looks like a deer in the headlights. So it's like, at this point, like, call it a day. Go to the trucks, do something. I mean, DiBurrito finally, I mean, it wasn't his choice, but he finally went down to where he probably belongs, as a truck. Ty Dillon's made enough money. He couldn't go and run a truck. And he has enough sponsorship, but okay, there's plenty there. Wow, that was definitely a cluster of a race. And speaking of clusters of a race, we are going to the Xfinity Series, which had cluster tendencies there. The Pit Boss 250, which saw AJ Allmendinger win. He led twice for 28 laps, won one stage, cleaned out Sheldon Creed, who was the other real dominant figure in the race. Sheldon Creed came back to finish ninth. He had a really fast race car, and he's a good road racer. So I think that's a good sign for later in the year because they have so many more road courses coming. Allmendinger, Byron, Keebler, the top three. Sammy Smith, the best regular. Sammy Smith, Justin Allgaier, Daniel Hemrick, and Sam Mayer end up being the Dash for Cash drivers. That's starting this weekend at Richmond. They'll be eligible for the 100K. Josh Berry and Sheldon Creed just outside there. Riley Herbst, another top 10 finish for him. Buckshot Jones actually was not, he came back from mid-pack and finished 11th. Chandler Smith 12th. Alex LeBay subbing for Josh Williams finished 15th. So there was some things there. I'm trying to, in the picks channel, yeah, and we'll get to the trucks in a minute, but I actually was right on the
Yeah,
on the pick
good call.
for once. And then, I mean, you kind of was, I think it was literally one of those three. I mean, we took two out of the three there. Keebler didn't really seem to have the pace on Saturday of the 10 and the 2 car, but in the end, he beat his teammates, and that's all that really matters. They're running for owners' points. They're the other team that's really in there other than the 10. Our wild cards definitely did not have great days, but that's a product of a lot of the driving. Brett, was a Sage Karam, blew an engine, probably got run over at some point too. Preston Pardis had a suspension failure, made the show, so credit to him making the race. The 4, so at the 66, the 74, the 4, and the 35 failed to make the show. I mean, Parker Chase almost stayed it the day before, so I think probably that was a problem. Whatever that John Leguizamo guy who's driving for, what's his name, Mike Harmon. I mean, that's just, that's going to happen. And then Cam Lawrence, unfortunate for him. Austin Hill blew up early, so at least made things a little more interesting points wise, because in the end he's got such a huge lead. And Hocevar doing Hocevar things, blew the transmission out of it 7 laps into the race. Parker Kligerman had issues, even though he was up there early in the race. He's a really good road racer. Unfortunate to lose that opportunity. John Hunter Nemechek was up there for a good part of the race, but he got wrecked. I think Kligerman probably got involved in something. Almirola was driving for SS Greenlight, and the car was ugly as fuck, and it ran just as bad as it looked. I'm pretty sure he got involved in the wreck. Connor Mozak did finish 19th. Okay, so you picked him. Or no, I picked. Sorry, well, whatever. If that's the bar, then it is a low bar. So yeah, I mean, 3 Cup guys doing the double duty, show up in the top. They're the top 3. It wasn't as straightforward as that though, Josh, because Sheldon Creed was up there and had a definite chance if it weren't for AJ Allmendinger running through him like he didn't exist. I think it would have been a pretty intriguing battle between the 10 and the 2 car, because Creed had taken the lead from Allmendinger and led 11 laps, and then Byron led 1, Creed, Kligerman. So Creed was there right in the middle, and then Allmendinger used him up to win the race. And I mean, it is what it is there. It's kind of what AJ Allmendinger does, but another road course win in the Xfinity Series for him, Josh.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the fact that he cleaned out Sheldon Creed, and I mean, in the middle of the race, AJ Allmendinger also got cleaned out on a restart. So, um, he spun out, comes back, and you know gets into Sheldon Creed and still ends up winning the race. So, yeah, a lot that happened in that race, and of course, I mean, got to mention the fact that last year in the Cup race, Allmendinger got cleaned out by Ross Chastain for the win. So he had it lost one way, and now he wins it the same way, or well, sort of, kind of the same way. So definitely. I mean, I don't know how much AJ feels about that, having to do that, but at the same time, it seems like that is what you got to do these days, is overdrive the corner and run over somebody to win races. And especially the fact that he's won here before in Xfinity, and he's now just a ringer in the Xfinity series. So more context there. Of course, a lot of things happened in that race, and then even so, with all the wrecking and everything, still there was a battle between Byron and battle between Allmendinger at the end of the race, which was pretty good, decent battle. And Byron, I think he had, like in the Cup car, I think he also had pretty good power, but Allmendinger was just better uh, overall in the throughout the entire lap. So I think that was also part of what helped him win that race. But I think those two cars. I think Sheldon Creed, obviously, losing positions and comes back to finish in the top 10. I think those guys were the best cars in the field. I mean, obviously Ty Gibbs finished third. I think he had a pretty good car as well, but I think he was quite as strong as the 2, the 10, and the 17 were. So would have been interesting if the four of them could have raced it out cleanly, but it is what it is. But yeah, a lot of names up here in the top 10 that I think are surprising to see in there. I mean, Sammy Smith, rookie, of course, finishing fourth. That's pretty surprising. Sam Mayer as well. Josh Berry, those guys aren't really known for road course racing, really. They finished top 10. So, that was pretty interesting there. I think Hemrick hooked somebody again this week and, yeah, finished
He
in
ran
sixth
over
place.
a couple
Yeah.
people. I think he got an all guy or some definite. He got into two people
Yeah.
uh, this week, and he got into people the week before at Atlanta.
Yeah, of course. So
So
he
he's
caused the last
picking
lap
up.
crash.
Yeah, so he's gone rogue, and I think he's kind of lost the plot where now he's like, all right, well, people have run over me my whole career, and I don't know if I'm going to have a career. So it's like, all right, I'll just start driving like them. It tells you how bad it is when somebody who knows how to drive properly and has done it for a good part of his career, albeit not to great success in NASCAR's top three series, has resorted to basically turning into Keebler Gibbs or some of these other idiot sticks that think that that's okay. Um, yeah, I mean, that's yeah. I agree with Mayer and Barry. There, I mean, definitely Barry is not a road racer for sure. Mayer probably has experience through some of the other categories he's run. I think it's a similar call for Sammy Smith, but then you're putting him in a Gibbs car. You put that, and then he has a experienced team. You give him a good piece. He can drive. He's proven it. He is giving himself an opportunity as he goes along the season. Of course, being already having a win. Um, he's kind of free rolling right now and trying to learn and get more playoff points and stage wins and things so he can put himself in a position to compete for the championship. I couldn't find the driver's points PDF on JSki does not work, so I'm working off of the owner's points. Uh, right now, Austin Hill continues to lead the points, but he had a 40 something point lead, but finishing down tailback, he's now up 15 points on what do you call uh, Herbst, Riley Herbst. John Hunter Nemechek is third. Allgaier fourth, and Chandler Smith is fifth. 6th is Sam Mayer. 7th is Sammy Smith. 8th is Sheldon Creed. 9th is Josh Berry. And 10th is Daniel Hemrick. 11th would be Parker Kligerman, and the bump spot right now, I mean, roughly, it's unofficial because I don't know if that's completely accurate, and probably is Cole Custer, who can't buy luck if his life depended on it. This whole entire season's been a disaster. It's almost like he belongs there. While he's getting outrun by freaking Riley Herbst every single week, which is pretty bad. He's kind of in the same boat as Ryan Preece in the Cup Series, where he finds a way to get involved in something, whether he's trying to or not. He's had bad luck, but I think it'll turn around for him, and he'll be a factor later in the year. But bad start to the year for sure for Cole Custer. All right, so we went through those two. Let's get into the Truck Series, the XPEL 225, and at COTA. And the results there see Zane Smith get another victory, repeat as the winner at COTA. 9th career Truck Series victory for him, and definitely locks himself into the playoffs now with a second win of the year. Zane Smith beats Kyle Busch, but there's more to it than that. Ty Majeski third, continuing his consistency starting out this season. Tyler Ankrum fourth for Hattori, and Ross Chastain, who started on pole, finishes fifth. Corey Heim, Nick Sanchez, Tanner Gray, Kaz Gralla driving for Tricon, and Ben Rhodes round out the top 10. I think that race actually went to, did they actually go to their scheduled distance? I think they did. They didn't go to overtime or any of that other malarkey, right?
Cup was the only one that went to overtime.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so there you go. Thanks on that. I mean, Eckes actually won a stage, but he had mechanical or suspension issues, so unfortunate for him. Electrical issues for Parker Kligerman knocked out another contender. Crafton got destroyed. Hocevar had a mechanical with the axle. Dean Thompson wrecks 4 laps into the race. Ed Jones didn't even get through the S's, and he was done. So that's rough for those guys. A rough day for Chase Purdy, who's been kind of all right so far this year. And then doesn't really have anything to show for it. You got some of these other cellar dweller type people. Rajah Caruth gets a top 15 finish. A credit to him. Starting to make some gains. Caden Honeycutt in the 04 gets a top 15 finish, just ahead of Miss Hummer 2.0 and Lawless Allen, Daniel Dye, Jake Garcia, et cetera, et cetera. But the story is not just the fact that Zane Smith gets another win, gets a second win of the year, defending series champion, but he got good points in the stages. Kyle Busch had the lead. The race was pretty much going his way, and I think he probably would have won the race, but he overruled his crew chief Brian Patty, who was trying to call him into pit road to avoid the inevitable caution, like the way that that fat tub of shit Paul Tracy and Townsend Bell yell about the danger zone. That's where Kyle Busch got into, and he tried to run it out, get fresher tires so that he could run back Zane Smith, and he got bit by that one and cost him the win. And he wasn't happy about it. He was kind of snippy at Jamie Howe. I wish he would do that to Jamie Little, because she sucks. If you want to figure out a reason to go and contemplate your life, go and listen to Jamie Little announce anything. She is horrendous at announcing. I mean, she's not great at pit road either, to be fair. She's okay, but good God Almighty, she is a horrible announcer. And then you have MW55, who's just a dumbass. And I think what do they have Phil Parsons back in there now? Or I don't know who they have in there anymore. I think they sometimes they have Phil.
But
They
Kurt in
have.
there.
Did they have Kurt in there on Saturday too? I didn't know. I don't even remember.
I had it on mute for the most part,
Yeah,
and I didn't
yeah,
even watch the whole thing, so um, I don't remember.
yeah. That's all good. I don't really want to go down that whole entire thing there in terms of who was working or what was going on. But yeah, that race was not was there wasn't a whole hell of a lot that went on. To be fair, uh, the what happened with Kyle Busch was really what determined the whole entire deal there in that Truck Series race. And yeah, so that's really what it is. Zane Smith going out there and getting that victory is a big deal for him. He basically burned his truck down afterwards, and fire response was pretty mediocre. But then it's
Oh,
NASCAR. What do
I
you
remember
expect?
now who announced it was Harvick because he started ranting about the mud flaps and said that they should go away from that because now he found out what happens when you light up the tires.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, Harv was in there. So that was the only semblance of ability in there. And then the Xfinity race was the former teammates Logano and Keselowski. So they were pretty solid. Yeah. So oh my god, I wanted to throw something through the TV. That dumb. Ugh, she's horrendous. And then that stupid ponytail. Like somebody lop it off, please. Just do us a favor. Yeah. So, what were your thoughts on the Truck Series?
No, I mean I agree with you on some of that, but I mean at the same time I don't really care that much for the announcing in general these days. But as far as the racing goes, I mean it was pretty interesting. In the middle of it, you saw Ross Chastain and Kyle Busch battle in the middle of the corners there throughout the S's at Coda. Of course, I think Ross had a problem and then suddenly just started dropping back because him and Kyle had a pretty good lap, couple laps that were fighting for the lead, and then Ross started dropping back and I think he had an issue and everything, and then Kyle Busch, yeah, like you said, he took the lead and probably could have dominated or led throughout the rest of that, but I think you go back to what he was talking about with the crew chief uh, trying to make a decision, anticipating a caution and everything, and I think it's just them outthinking themselves or overthinking themselves in that situation. Just go with the flow of the race and try. I mean, it's hard to account for a caution, especially there is the rate of cautions that they were going at. They only had one caution in the first 25 laps of the race, and then they only had another caution later on for Parker Kligerman. But then at the end of the race, a 13 lap green flag run, and Zane Smith was able to drive away from it. So yeah, definitely a good win for Zane Smith. Of course, won here last year, same race. So continues to dominate in this series, on any track, and he's shown he's got quite of a lot of ability in being able to run in the truck series. So could see him potentially maybe he goes to Xfinity next year, starts to get more opportunities in Cup more than what he already has on his plate. So that should be interesting there. Interesting with the mud flap deal with him said doing a burnout on the front stretch and then burning up the tire, setting the car literally on fire after the race. Yeah, I mean, on one hand, like I've I've never been too much of a fan. I mean, I like the burnouts, but like I feel like sometimes we take it to they overdo it and leads to too much where they literally destroy the tires and then start damaging the car. We've seen it in Cup when drivers would intentionally destroy cars doing burnouts, and I think part of it is to hide what they're doing with the the suspension and all that stuff. And maybe that was the effort there. But I'd never been a fan of the excessive burnouts, and of course leads to the car going on fire because the plastic mud flaps or whatever they're made out of, rubber mud flaps, whatever it's made out of, catches on fire, ignites, and then the whole rear end is on fire. So that was an interesting scene there, but didn't really care too much for it. And of course now think Harvick is right. They got to rethink the idea of having mud flaps on the race car where there's no real rain that happened. I mean, they're in the middle of Texas and there's not going to be any rain in the weekend. Of course, a lot of dust because they were cutting the corners pretty close to the edge between the curb on the grass and sand and everything. So maybe it's for that, but I don't know how effective that really is. That's just more for style points than anything. So maybe don't have to run it or go back to a different idea, something that maybe doesn't ignite like that. But interesting there. Doesn't really have to do much with the racing, although maybe it helps with downforce in some way with the underbody or whatever with Cup or even in Xfinity and Truck Series. But yeah, I mean the solid race, I guess. You had a lot of other guys that finished decently in the Truck Series. Of course, I picked Alex Bowman, and he didn't even qualify for the race because they had a flat tire during the qualifying run. So
That's such a
yeah,
bad rule too.
yeah, and could have won too. So it's pretty bad that he wasn't able to race in that one. So yeah, unfortunate, but sometimes that's how it goes. And of course, Ed Jones was my other pick as a wild card, and he didn't even complete a lap. Had an issue with the suspension on the first lap of the race. So yeah, unfortunate there as well. So we'll have to continue on. But yeah, I mean, overall solid weekend of racing here, and well, I mean, depending on how you want to look at it, but there's plenty of content to generate from this, of course. And one other note, I'll go back to the Cup race before I stop talking here. Kurt Busch last lap, really emotional. You could tell from the broadcast, and obviously that's still his car and everything. Tyler Reddick's taking over it now, and still shows how passionate he is about racing and how badly he wants to be in the race car. No idea if he'll ever come back, and starting to think that maybe he's hoping for at least a part-time opportunity to feel well enough. I'm starting to think that maybe he's already ran his final lap in NASCAR, and maybe he won't even be able to do the other opportunities he wants to do outside of NASCAR if he ever gets healthy enough to do it. And maybe he's just gonna have to live with it and just have to kind of go into like, I mean, he's already kind of doing it, but the Dario Franchitti role that Franchitti's been doing with Ganassi, and of course Kurt Busch doing that now with 2311, being that mentor coach role with the race team and helping Reddick and Bubba be their best. But yeah, I wanted to bring that one up because I thought that was an interesting point there, and I thought he did a good job
Yeah,
announcing too, so maybe that's in his future.
definitely. Yeah, and I think if they were smart, I mean, it was on Twitter and stuff. I mean, Kurt Busch, anytime he's in the booth, he brings the heat, he brings the knowledge. Uh, he understands all the different aspects, and it for a lot of people, coming from when I've been watching this sport, I saw him as a freaking pencil neck, whatever, whatever, bug eyed, whatever, with the pointy ears and everything. Guy at 20 years old driving the Exide batteries Ford in the Truck Series, and he was part of that huge wreck that almost had Jeff Bodine eat it. Going from there and some of the stuff he used to do to where he's become now, kind of a statesman, somebody who's a great representation of this sport. If Fox cared about, which they obviously don't, if they actually cared about quality, they already signed Harvick. Okay, that's great. They should go and sign Kurt Busch too, and have those two announced, or get another crew chief who isn't working anymore that might have the ability, but then that would get rid of Larry Max, and they're not going to do that. So you put the two drivers in there that actually have a clue and can play off of each other, and you have Joy for however long he cares to do it anymore, because it seems like he doesn't want to do it anymore. before Adam Alexander ends up getting that, which is going to be horrendous. But yeah, Kurt being emotional, I mean, credit, I mean, obviously it makes a lot of sense. He wants to he wants to actually run a race or two and call it on his own. He figured after all these years he's going to be able to run it out his way. Kevin's able, at least for now, hopefully he can get through this whole year and he can run it out and have his final year. And some of these other guys didn't get that chance. Matt Kenseth didn't get that chance. Uh, there are some guys who didn't. I mean, Tony's was pretty brutal, getting hurt in the sand rail, and then he didn't run the whole season. There's been guys who didn't get to walk off. I mean, Dale Jr. He did get one more year, but he had to miss a lot of time before he even got to that 1 year and got out of the race car. So we'll see what happens with Kurt coming along here. Points in the Truck Series. Zane Smith leads the points by 2 over Majeski. Of course, Zane Smith does have the 2 wins and a stage win to give him 11 playoff points, so he's a leading driver with that. Ben Rhodes is 18 points back in third. Eckes 20 points back in fourth, and Grant Enfinger rounds out the top 5, 37 points behind. The 3 competitive Thor Sport trucks are second, third, and sixth in points, so take that for what you will. So that makes 5 Fords in the, or what is it? 1, 2, 3. No, 4 Fords in the top 6. So that's pretty good. The days of Toyota dominating may be over in the Truck Series. Tyler Ankrum, speaking of that, is the highest Toyota in the points right now in 7th. D. Burrito 8th, Corey Heim 9th, and Tanner Gray rounding out the top 10. He's tied with Chase Purdy, who lost 3 spots after his run at COTA. Nick Sanchez is 9 points out of the playoffs cutoff there. He's the only one that's really close at the moment. You have some names there. Stuart Friesen, who's made the Final Four multiple times. Hocevar, who's made the playoffs both years. Timmy Hill is just kind of someone that he's just sneaking around. If he can get some good finishes, he might be a factor. Jake Garcia missed Daytona, and he's actually somewhat in the mix, to be fair. I mean, he's, 40, like 39 and 3. He's 42 points out, and he missed a race. He's ahead of freaking Haley Deegan, Daniel Dye, Raja Caruth, Chris Wrong. Some of these other people, Brett Holmes, he's had a brutal start to the year. And others like, friggin' Dean Thompson's a fucking disaster. Jesus. If he wasn't daddy's money, he wouldn't have a job. Christ, he's terrible. So that's the trucks. They'll be back, of course, at Texas Motor Speedway this coming weekend. So we'll preview that here shortly. All right, time for the roundup here, busy roundup, and try to keep it as tight as possible. MotoGP has their opener, and Pecco Bagnaia, the defending world champion, starts out with a double with a sprint race win and the race win itself by just under a second over Maverick Vinales. Marco Bezzecchi third for the VR46 Ducati team. Johan Zarco fourth. Alex Marquez fifth. So 4 Ducatis in the top 5. The factory KTM teammates are Brad Binder and Jack Miller, 6th and 7th. Former world champion Fabio Quartararo in 8th. And Alicia Spargaro and Alex Rins round out the top 10. Rins and his former teammate at Suzuki, Joanne Mir, finished 10th and 11th. Nakagami making 3 Hondas there. Those are the highest placed Hondas. Augusto Fernandez, after a crash in the sprint race, came back, or one of those. I think it was sprint race because his teammate crashed and was out of the Pole. Espargaro crashed and had in qualifying and was knocked out for the weekend. Franco Morbidelli was the last classified finisher on his Yamaha. The race itself was marred by Mark Marquez being Mark Marquez and running over somebody because he's a douche, just like Fish Lips, and not getting a penalty because the FIM and everybody is run by the Spanish Armada, like Repsol Honda is, and we see how good that's working out for. Took out Miguel Oliveira. It was a home race for him, the Portuguese Grand Prix, and he gets absolutely destroyed 2 laps into the race. Had a good bike too there, so they had that race. They had the race there. Sprint was a sprint. What is it? Sprint qualifying or is that sprint? Yeah. So I mean, and just to go back, the sprint, Bagnaia wins over Jorge Martin. Mark Marquez started on pole, qualified on pole, and he finished third in that race. He qualified on pole, of course, it was for both Miller, Vinales, Alex Espargaro, Oliveira, Zarco, Marquez, and Quartararo. Rounded out your top 10. Only 9 riders get points for whatever reason. That seems kind of random, but whatever. They'll be racing in Argentina this coming weekend, so for their second race, and we'll see Mark Marquez is out for this race because he injured his wrist, so it's kind of karma. I don't know about what do you call Paul Espargaro, if he's going to be back. There's definitely a lot going on with the injuries and stuff. Oliveira also is going to miss the race at Argentina, so it's pretty bad start to the year there in that sense. Big crash is not great, and then also Tech 3 went for 2. Okay, so now intends on to replace. So he had the huge crash, several fractures of his jaw and back, as well as severe trauma in the lung area. So will not be able to be back on his bike for Argentina and the Americas GP. So that's going to be tough for that team. So 3 guys that are not going to be in that race this coming weekend. In Moto 2, it was kind of business as usual in Moto 2 with Pedro Acosta getting the victory over Aaron Canet. Tony Arbolino's third. Philippe Salick was fourth. Manuel Gonzalez fifth. Jake Dixon, Sam Lowe's, the 2 Brits, sixth and seventh. Albert Arenas, Somikat Chantra, and Jeremy Alcoba, making it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Spanish riders in the top 10. Winner last year, Celestino Vietti, was 11th. Joe Roberts, who won last year as well, he finished in 14th. The American and Sean Dillon Kelly finished 20th out of the points. A struggle for him. Hopefully he'll pick it up as the season goes on. The Arizona Nationals, mentioned that earlier, with likely possibly the last time they'll be racing at Firebird for the NHRA, which is a shame. Justin Ashley wins in Top Fuel. Robert Height in Funny Car, and Camry Caruso gets her first career pro stock victory at Firebird, Wild Horse Pass Motorsports Park, whatever. Bruno Massel, Fox announcer for NHRA, won in Comp Eliminator. He's a former champion in that class, of course. So credit to him. In Top Fuel, Justin Ashley defeated Sean Langdon with a 370 with a 329.34. So he ran a slower speed, but he had a better elapsed time and better reaction time to get that victory. Ashley beat Tony Schumacher, Mike Salinas, and Steve Torrance on his way to the final. Langdon beat Antron Brown, teammate Doug Coletta, who had qualified number 1, and Leah Pruitt to get to the final there. And so that was Top Fuel. In Funny Car, Robert Height beats Ron Capps, a long-time battle to the veterans of the sport. So Robert Height gets his first win of the year. He had to beat uh, his father-in-law and his boss. I mean, he's not his father-in-law anymore, but essentially because of the grandkid. Beats John Force first round, Bob Taskin, number one qualifier in the second, Chad Green in the semis to get to the final, while Ron Capps beats Alex Laughlin, Blake Alexander, and Alexis DeJoria. Benefited from all three of them basically crapping themselves on the tree. Then in the final, they were on the tree. They basically were even there, but Ron Capps had tire shake, and Robert Height took the Proc Rocket to victory there, 393 with 328.62 miles an hour. And then in Pro Stock, Camry Caruso won Rookie of the Year last year, wins her first career race at Phoenix over Bo Butner. So this is one for the KB Titan team versus the Elite Motorsports. So 1-1 so far this year. Christian Quadra, first Mexican-born driver to start on pole and pro stock. I think that was a stat. Gets through round one, not able to show up for round two, which assisted Camry Caruso, who had beaten Derek Kramer, who had mechanical problems, basically shook off the starting line. And then she had a solo, beats Matt Hartford, runs a slower elapsed time and slower speed, but wins on a hole shot. And then runs a better speed and time than Bo Butner and was ahead by a hundredth there to win 659 with a 2:10.31. Bo Butner from the 11 spot beats teammate Erica Enders, Fernando Quadra Jr., and Kyle Koretsky Redlit to get to the finals. I don't know why they're showing pros on a motorcycle when there wasn't any. Okay. So there is that. The schedule now, this coming weekend, they'll be running the Winter Nationals, which is interesting because it's spring now, I think, right? Yeah. So they call it the Winter Nationals, but then Pomona Winter Nationals this week. Yeah. So we'll see what's going on there. Trying to, for the Winter Nationals, you'll have the three classes: Top Fuel, Funny Car, Pro Stock. Top Alcohol Dragster will be back, so Tony Stewart will be racing Top Alcohol and Funny Car, Comp Eliminator, Super Stock, Super Comp, Super Gas, Top Dragster, and Top Sportsman will be competing there at the newly renamed In-N-Out Burger Pomona drag strip for the Lucas Oil Winter Nationals. So we will see how that all goes, and we'll talk about it next week. Supercross at Seattle, mentioned it earlier. Historic night for Eli Tomac to get his 50th career Supercross victory and tie James Bubba Stewart in the all-time list with 50 victories, and which is amazing for how it was or where he was a few years ago to now get to 50 victories. Is at Seattle Lumen Field. He wins over Cooper Webb and Justin Barsha. They round out the podium. Jason Anderson fourth, Chase Sexton fifth, Roxon sixth, Plessinger, Cian Cerullo, Craig, and Christian Craig, Justin Hill. The Cooper Webb so Webb and Sexton were up there in the top five. So I'm trying to go, on the track. Trying to go through here. Around see recap. So yeah, go with that. There you go. Eli Tomac in terms of point standings. Yeah, so record of tying second most in 450s with 50 wins. Of course, the all-time leader is Jeremy McGrath, and he's 70-something wins. So ties the points also with Cooper Webb with 6 rounds to go. So a lot to go through here with the rest of this series. So plenty of time. All these races are going to be tight. It's been that way the whole season between Tomac and Webb. Chase Sexton's starting to give up a little bit of room. He's now 22 points behind Tomac and Webb. Roxon is tied with Jason Anderson for fourth, and they're tied for fourth. Roxon, of course, has won a race this year. Barsha is 4 points behind them in sixth. Plessinger had a chance last week or a couple weeks ago to win, crashed, is seventh. Christian Craig, Cian Cerullo, and Justin Hill round out the top 10. In Supercross, in the West Coast 250 Supercross, Jet Lawrence, fourth victory of the season for him in the 250 West class, and continuing that domination that he's had all year. The Lawrence brothers are probably going to go and win the both or Jet Lawrence, Jet Lawrence is, and then Cam Lawrence are going to go, or no, Cam Lawrence is a Trans Am driver, whatever. Jet Lawrence, the winner over RJ Hampshire, Cameron McAdoo, top 3, Enzo Lopes, Max Volan, Levi Kitchen, Pierce Brown, Carson Mumford, Mitchell Oldenburg, and Cole Thompson round out your top 10. Right now, Jet Lawrence has a 23-point lead on RJ Hampshire and a 26-point lead on Cameron McAdoo. After that, there's a nice battle between Oldenburg, Lopes, and Kitchen. Points-wise, only 3 points separate those guys. And they will be racing this weekend. Or no, they're actually taking a week off. Oh, wow. So they're actually taking a week off, and then they will be back for on Easter. What is it? Easter weekend? Yeah, because that's the Easter weekend, and they will be racing at Glendale at State Farm Stadium, and for 450s and 250 West, it's a Triple Crown event, so that'll be a little different than the usual. Then they'll go back out east to race at Atlanta Motor Speedway. Then coming out to New Jersey, East Rutherford at MetLife Stadium, Nashville at Nissan Stadium, and Mile High Stadium in Denver, and the season finale will be at Rice Eccles Stadium in Salt Lake City. That one will actually be on regular TV. Will be on USA. The Nashville round will be on NBC, actually, so that'll be something. And Atlanta Motor Speedway will be on NBC, so interesting there. I'll get some Supercross on TV here late in the season. Formula E Sao Paulo E-Prix was a Jaguar benefit. They were able to dominate thereafter. Issues for other drivers. Mitch Evans wins over Nick Cassidy, who's the customer Jaguar with the Envision Racing Team. 2/10 of a second was the margin of victory. 0.284. Sam Bird, Evans' teammate, half a second behind there. In third, gets the fastest lap point. Antonio Felix da Costa, Jean-Eric Verne, Stoffel Van Dorn, who started on pole, and Pascal Verline, Jake Hughes, Rene Rast, and Sebastian Buemi round out the point scorers there for that round. There was issues for some of the Norman Nato didn't even get off the line. That's pretty bad. And then Jake Dennis got wrecked in the race, so lost out on points. Mortara, Fenestrez, and Nico Muller all were DNFs. Jake Dennis got wrecked by Dick Tantrum, so what a shocker. That's probably why he's in Formula E and not anywhere near Formula One. The points for these guys with a month break now, essentially 24 days to be exact. The point standing sees Pascal Wehrlein get his first points. He didn't score at South Africa, and he's now increased his points lead to 24 over Jake Dennis, who has not scored points in the last 3 rounds of the championship. Nick Cassidy has started to make a move up. He's only a point behind Dennis in third. Cassidy's scored 3 consecutive podium finishes, so pretty solid there. 3 different, what is it? The Avalanche team is a Porsche powered team, so 2 Porsches, then a Jaguar. The DS Penske team, Jean-Eric Verne, has scored points the last 3 rounds as well, and once finished second and then fifth this last weekend. Antonio Felix da Costa, 2 former champions there. Da Costa, the Porsche driver, third, first, and fourth the last 3 rounds. So right now, that battle from second to fifth is really close, only 4 points. Sam Bird is sixth, Buemi seventh, Rene Rast eighth, Mitch Evans ninth, and Jake Hughes 10th. So both McLarens are up there, both Jaguars, and all 4 Jaguar powered cars are in the top 10 in points. And that's a close battle too. From Sam Bird all the way down to Jake Hughes is only 12 points. Evans with his win moves up to 9th, and so that's a good job for him. Bird with his fastest lap goes in after 2 consecutive not a non-start and a DNF, goes and gets P3 there. So they'll have a month off. We'll get back to it when they come back to the series. The App team has still not scored any points. The Maserati team is still struggling. They only have 3 points so far this year. There's some issue with the Mahindra. I think there's some problem with the scoring there on their site. So the Porsche, Tag Heuer Porsche leads by 41 points over Envision. Envision has a 20-point lead on they're the customer team to Jaguar, and they have a 20-point lead on them. DS Penske is 4th, and Avalanche Andretti is 5th. So they're only separated by 3 points. Neom McLaren Formula E is 6th. I don't really know where Mahindra is, but they're right behind them in terms of points. The McLaren team is destroying their factory counterpart Nissan in points, so that's something. And the Mahindra team is is 7th, but their customer team, the Apt Cooper team, is struggling. So maybe they'll be able to go and make some changes between now and next month. Let's see. Get back to move that. Yeah. So let's get into Formula 2 and Formula 3 previews. The points going into Melbourne this weekend. Ralph Beauchamp leads by 1 point over Théo Pourchaire, who didn't score any points at Jeddah. Beauchamp only scored 5 points in the sprint. Iwasa is 2 points behind, Pourchaire 1 point behind. He had a solid weekend at Jeddah and has scored in every round. Frederick Vesti won the feature race at Jeddah. He's now 4th and 5 points behind. Jehan Daruvula is 9 points out in 5th. Jack Doohan, Dennis Hauger, Richard Vachor, Kushmini, and Victor Martins round out your top 10, 16 points between first and 10th. So still early days, plenty of races to go. And the team's championship, Campos is leading by 2 over ART. They have a 7-point lead on Dams, 8 on MP Motorsports. So that's the battle right there for Formula 2. In Formula 3, the standings getting into, they haven't raced since Sakir a few weeks ago. So Bortoletto won the feature race, so he leads the points over Goth by 3. Bogdanovic is third, 4 points back. Marty, fourth. Gregor Saucy is fifth. Colapinto, Browning, Collette, Aaron, and Kalen Frederick round out the top 10. 20 points separating first to 10th, and who's tied. 9th through 11th are all tied at 6 points there. So Sebastian Montoya in 13th. There's some of the other people, American drivers, of course, that are on the grid in Formula 3 and Formula 2 for that matter. Trident has a huge points lead so far with the great weekend they had at Sakir. They're, 24 points ahead of Prema and 30 points ahead of ART. We'll see how that all goes at Albert Park for the first time that both Formula 2 and Formula 3 will ever be there. One series that definitely has been there a lot is V8 Supercars, and they will be at Albert Park for their usual round supporting the Formula 1 World Championship. Only one race so far this year, or one round, 2 races, of course. Chaz Mostert is the points leader for Ford over Brody Kostecki, who's in a Chevy. Cam Waters, who won one of the races, or he got the win after both Red Bull cars were disqualified, is third. David Reynolds fourth, and Andre Heimgartner is fifth. So 3 Fords, 2 Chevys so far. Then after that, it's a bunch of Chevys. The next Ford is Matt Payne in 12th. And then Hazelwood. The Shell V-Power team is 16th and 17th, so that's pretty bad so far, but we'll see what happens here this coming weekend. They will have 4 races this weekend, so they'll have the qualifying. They'll race on Thursday, whatever convert to invent local time. So it'll be Thursday morning our time for the first race, and then Thursday evening into Friday morning our time for race 4, and then 2 races on Saturday for the supercars there, which will probably lead into both of them will be on Saturday. So we'll see what goes on there. Probably would expect Shane Van Gisbergen to go out there and win a couple of those rounds after the disqualification they had last race. So that is it. Thankfully, my throat is parched. So let's get into the Indy cars this coming weekend. Texas, they had a great start to the season at St. Petersburg, a lot of energy. They were on NBC, decent ratings, the whole bit, and then they decided to take a month essentially off between races. So it's actually the PPG 375, my fault. So they'll be racing there. They don't have an entry list, but essentially you can, because Marcus Ericsson. So it's basically the point standings will go into that in terms of the field as I open a seltzer. All the regulars that were there at St. Petersburg, of course, will be running again. Marcus Armstrong will swap out his seat for Takuma Sato. And yeah, all these other guys, yeah, we got through all that. Yeah, yeah, they're all so uh Ed Carpenter will also race this coming weekend, along with Sato. The rest of those drivers, Marco Andretti, Ryan Hunter, Tony Kanaan, Catherine Legg, and Stefan Wilson will all be running at Indy. So with that, Josh, I mean, you can go and chime in here. The Texas race in recent years, after they did their latest reconfiguration and make it an even bigger shithole, has affected the racing because they've only had one groove. I think Sato tried to run the lane up and wiped himself out of the race. That was the COVID year when they started their season there.
Yeah, he didn't even wipe him. It was not out of the race. Like, he wiped himself out in qualifying.
In qualifying, yeah, that was made it. And then it was I forget who it was. I think it was like Rinus VK and Pillow wrecked 8 laps into the race, so that was pretty bad too. But that was a couple, 2-3 years ago. There's been some huge wrecks, of course, over the history of racing at that hellhole. Trying to go through the history with IndyCar. I mean, this is probably not a good idea, but I'm going to do it anyway. Go through. They haven't even changed the sponsor on Racing Reference. Tells you all you need to know. Over the years since the merger, Scott Dixon has won there. What is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. And Elio Castro Dash Neves has won there twice. Trying to look through some of these other things. Will Powers won there twice. And Newgarden 2 times as well. You have Green Rehal, Ed Carpenter, the late Justin Wilson, Dario Franchitti, Ryan Briscoe, all winners one time during the merger years, along with Pato O'Ward, who won last year in 2021 in the second half of the doubleheader. Last year was a single race. Joseph Newgarden made the pass on Scott McLaughlin on the final lap, coming out of 3 and 4 to get the victory after McLaughlin had dominated the race, led 186 laps, coming off of winning his first career race at St. Pete. So tough way to lose that race, but he ended up getting second place. Ericsson and Will Power, basically those 3 were the dominant figures in the race, and then Newgarden there snuck up and got that victory. Newgarden, McLaughlin, Ericsson, Power, Scott Dixon top 5. Jimmy Johnson finished 6th, and I think that ended up being his best finish in IndyCar.
Yep, I think so.
Alex Pillow was 7th. Pagano Santucci was filling in the 45 for Root Beer Floathead was filling in for Jack Harvey, and Rinus VK finished 10th. Trying to look through here, some of the people that were in there. Sato was running for Dale Coyne last year. Some of these rookies, I mean, what is it? Kyle Kirkwood was leading the race, and
Then he wrecked
crashed. Which is basically you could just say that for every race, I think, last year. Green Rehal wrecked. There was a 3-car incident. Devlin DeFrancesco, I think, was the one that started it by going on the apron because he's an idiot. Took out Castro Neves and Rahal. Rossi had a battery issue, so that's pretty bad. Sato wrecked on his own. Drive shaft issue for Rosenquist, who actually qualified on pole for this race last year. And then Lundgaard wrecked late in the race to get everybody together for the last 15 laps. Okay, so I guess from there, what are you thinking for this weekend at Texas? expectations? Does PJ1 actually finally wear out, and are they able to actually race? Or are we going to have the same one groove nonsense that we've had over the recent years at Texas Motor Speedway? And who are you picking wild card, Josh?
Yeah, I mean, I think, for this race, I mean, it's probably going to be more of the same the last couple of years, what we've seen from this track. Factor in also that the Truck Series is racing there this weekend as well, so there might be some mixture between the Goodyear compound and the Firestone tires compound. And also, I mean, both those tires are going to react differently to the PJ1, although I think both those races will end up being single file anyways. But it's going to be tough to pass probably. And you're gonna have to see stuff like, obviously I talk about it, using the top, and that's in air quotes here at Texas, but using the top line at IndyCar for this racetrack. We saw Kyle Kirkwood do it a couple of times, in turn one last year. There was a couple of points in the race where he was hooked up and could run that part of the racetrack. Jimmy Johnson hung it outside a couple times, and so it seems like if you get a good enough run, if you can build off of turn two and then go through turn 3 and 4, and then come back onto the front straight and get a good draft slipstream off of the car in front of you. You can maybe fake to the inside and go to the outside and try to make a move there. So that's probably what's going to happen. Of course, also notable Pato Award when he won in 2021. I think he squeezed by on the bottom below Scott Dixon, was able to hold on to it and go on for the win. So it's going to be tough to pass, but because it's tough to pass, they're going to be trying to make big moves to increase position throughout the race. So they'll have that lane and a half to use, I think, of asphalt that isn't stained by PJ1 there. So it's going to be tough to navigate around and everything. So we'll see how it plays out. But it's going to be interesting with the series, who's going to be good at this track. And of course last year Penske was really good at this track. Of course Scott McLaughlin ran up front a bunch and then lost it in the last corner to just Newgarden, so I expect them to be up there. Also want to factor in Chip Ganassi racing as well. They were good last year at this track, and obviously they were good at the Indy 500. And you wonder, with the speed that they had there, can they carry it into Texas? And then also, there's probably, I think, a lot of teams probably use this race as kind of a gauge to see where their oval racing setups are. And I mean, obviously it's different than Indianapolis, but the handling on an oval, I think they probably gauge an idea of where the balance is and everything. So I expect Ganassi to be up there as well. And also look at McLaren. I mean, obviously, Pato Award won a few years ago in 2021 for his career win in IndyCar competition. So, I mean, there's gonna be a lot of players in this race, but I'm gonna go with Scott McLaughlin here. I think last year, course, lost the race in the last lap, and I think he comes back and avenges that loss to his teammates. So I'll pick Scott McLaughlin as my pick, and then wild card. Wild card to go with Kyle Kirkwood. Obviously last year did pretty well in this race, racing for AJ Foyt until you spun out and wrecked, but obviously now racing for Andretti. So let's see what he can do. First oval race out on a track that he's proven that he can be a good racer on when he has the luck and the equipment.
Yeah, solid picks there for sure. Scotty getting redemption. Kyle Kirkwood, definitely, you're right. That was one of his better showings in what was a pretty brutal rookie year for him in the AJ Foyt toilets. Right now, my picks, I mean, I could do my homer pick and go with Pato because that's essentially the closest thing to a home race as he has. Uh, Chevys, I think, have a bit of an edge on that track. Not as much, of course, at Indy, but uh, Dixon finished third at St. Pete, trying to get that 7th championship. And I think he starts his run towards championship number 7 with a victory on Sunday at Texas Motor Speedway. Uh, Obviously, trying to, as Josh mentioned, trying to prepare for Indy, the only oval they'll have prior to the Indianapolis 500 practice and testing and all that. But so I think Scott Dixon gets the victory there. Wild card selection. That's an interest. It's definitely an interesting choices. For looking back, I mean, it was 27, so you had already you said Kirkwood, so that's a solid one. I mean, that's just wrong. I think we have to qualify. I mean, in this case, I could really be a douche and go with the defending race winner, Joseph Newgarden, because he's outside of the top half in points, but I'm not going to do that. Let's see here. You know what? I don't know why I'm doing it or why, but I'm gonna go with Renus VK. He is, I mean, he's a solid shoe when he's on and he has the right setup. He's one of the best drivers, in the series. He's got a ton of potential, but can Ed Carpenter give him the car uh, week to week? Of course, his teammate Connor Daly is there, and then they're running 3 cars this weekend. So I'm gonna go Renus VK, a guy who, especially at Indianapolis, seems to do really well because, uh, of course, his owner wants to win the Indianapolis 500 for many reasons. Uh, Wild card. So Renus VK is my wild card pick for this weekend at Texas. Okay, moving on to Formula One. I don't think it'll be very hard to make selections here. Australian Grand Prix uh, taking place this weekend. Um, what's it called? In Melbourne in recent years. Charles Leclerc won after mechanical issues um, for fish lips. He led from start to finish from pole. The winner the prior year was, or three, it took three, that was the first time in 3 years they'd raced there uh, because of COVID. Bottas, Vettel back to back, Rosberg, Hamilton, Rosberg, Kimi Räikkönen, Jenson Button, going back to guys who are now driving NASCAR. Button was really solid there, won there 3 times. Vettel won there, 3 times. And Lewis has only won at the Australian Grand Prix twice. Not one of his better race tracks, considering how many races he has won. Same as Nico Rosberg, actually. So there's something there. Go back to the results last year. Sainz spun off on the first lap, or it says laps 1, but it says from laps 3 to 6. Oh, yeah. And then, Vettel retired due to a crash. Verstappen had a fuel leak. Otherwise, everybody else finished. Fred Alonso was the last finisher on the track in 17th, behind Nicholas Latifi and Yuki Tsunoda. That's pretty terrible. Albon actually scored points in this race last year. It was Leclerc, Checo Perez, George Russell, Lewis Hamilton, Lando Norris was the top 5. Ricardo, Ocon, Bottas, Gasly, and Albon rounding out your top 10. So I'll go first here. And, we know who I'm going to pick. It's Fish Lips to win. Figure he's also going to win the pole because he's pissed off that he actually had to work hard for once. He still threw a bitch fit anyway because he's a tool. but he'll win. He'll win pole and win the race this weekend at Albert Park. 4 DRS zones for this race, so it'll definitely work in the hands uh, of the Red Bull team because of their DRS setup being so far superior over everybody else. Lips wins and gets pole. Wild card choice here is an interesting one, I guess. It's only one round so far, so not a lot to work off of. So, I mean, or no, 2 rounds, my fault. I'm already forgetting because I don't want to think about Saudi existing. So yeah, right now, so then I would assume we'll just go outside of the top 10. Uh, I could get crazy and I go Logan, but I don't think so. It's a tough circuit. He has never raced there before. Piastri might have raced there in lower formulas. De Vries hasn't raced there, to my knowledge. Hulkenberg, it's been a while for him. Or maybe Phil. Yeah, no, it's been a while for him. I'm going to go as a wild card choice. Of course, not to win, but to go and do something in the race. I'll go with Alex Albon. I was thinking about Logan Sargent, but I'll go with Alex Albon
Good pick
as
from
my
last
wild
year.
card. And because they have a decent car there at Williams, and they do have pace to go and compete for back end points. And the Australian Grand Prix over the years has been one where being able to last is bigger than having outright speed. So I think that plays in the hands of the Williams team and Alex Albon. But what say you, Josh, in regards to Albert Park this weekend for Formula One?
I mean, I have to keep going with Max Verstappen until he proves otherwise. I think you're absolutely right. I mean, he's going to continue to. I mean, obviously, he didn't win last F1 race, but I think it's expected as long as he qualifies well, he should be up there, up front. I think it will be interesting to see how they go qualify after their issues qualifying, in Saudi Arabia. So we'll see if he's able to not have any issues there. Because if he does have issues, then it does open the box a little bit and potentially let Sergio Perez score another victory, something like that. So or any of the other drivers. So let's I'll go with Verstappen because I think it's a pretty safe pick and everything. Wild card. Yeah, I'm gonna go with you know Zhou Guanyu. I'll pick him in this race. I think Alfa Romeo, they have a lot to prove this year, obviously, but I think he's done solidly in the past, and I think they have a lot of midfield pace. They can potentially kind of do what Williams did last year, and maybe they can uh, take a different tire strategy and go and potentially finish in the points, or maybe score right outside the points. You finished 13th in Saudi Arabia, so we'll see if they're able to go out and potentially score 1 point or something like that. I think I mean, we want to give podium or anything like that. I'll say Sergio Perez second, and then I'll say that Charles Leclerc finishes on the podium here at Albert Park. So yeah, that's what I'll go with.
All right, so Fernando Alonso actually doesn't get a podium finish. I'll go and edit that. I'll delete that right there. I was about to start the truck part. I think it's yeah. So Josh podium, fish lips, Checo, Charles, Eclair. Uh, so for me, podium, obviously fish lips. I'll also go with Checo, and I'll go chalk. I'll go the way it's gone so far this season. Um, I'll plan. So that's our picks. We'll see what happens with that, and we'll definitely go over it next week. The Truck Series runs at the hellhole that is Texas Motor Speedway for what is it? How many times they've ran there? They've been running there for many years. Was it 42, 45? They've ran 48 races. This is going to be the 49th event at Texas Motor Speedway in the history of the Truck Series. So that's pretty crazy. Used to be connected to Cup race. One of them, they used to run 2 races a year there. Now they're running only one, and that since that era started the last couple of years, John Hunter Nemechek won in 21, and Stuart Friesen won last year. I'll try to go through. Friesen, Eckes, Priest was driving because he was doing a alternating schedule amongst all 3 series. Hocevar and Ty Majeski was your top 10. John Hunter Nemechek had started on pole, finished 6th. Corey Heim, 7th. Chandler Smith, 8th. Crafton, 9th. And DiBurrito, 10th. The top 3 guys, Friesen, Eckes, and Priest, led 127 of the races, 147 laps because of the green white checkers that took place. I'm trying to see here. Ankrum had fallen out of that race early, so Zane Smith had issues. Finished 6 laps down last year. So that is, I'll go over there. Take that out right there. Todd Bodine actually ran one of those. That was one of the races he ran last year to get to 500 total starts or whatever, I think, in NASCAR's top 3 category, or 750 or some 800. I forget, whatever. It was some big number for Todd Bodine. There won't be any bumping for the truck series. They only got 36 trucks at this race, so works out for the likes of Trey Hutchins, who's showing up. If and the 46 will be filled in by somebody, I guess. Chad Chastain will be running this weekend in the 41 for Nice. Jack Wood will be in the 51 for KBM. Go through here. Ryan Vargas will be in the 30 again this weekend. That doesn't matter. They suck. Reum is actually driving again for AM Racing. Matt Mills, Taylor Gray, I don't know. Yeah, Hutchins, I mentioned, Boyd, some of these other randoms. So I'm going to go and say right now, of course, what is it? You have Zane Smith. He's won twice this year. The other winner is Christian Eckes, and the McAnally Hildeman team is looking really good so far this year. Can't really say the same for GMS, but I say they will turn that around this coming weekend. We will see Grant Enfinger get the victory at Texas Motor Speedway in the Speedy Cash 250. As I have to bring up the driver points that way. And my trying to see how many people that have run every race is 20, 21, 22. All right, so just outside of the cutoff. My wild card pick, I picked Grant Enfinger, and because there's only 22 drivers that have run every race this year, so I mean it's interesting actually. You know what? I didn't do the dick move earlier for whatever the Indy cars with Joseph Newgarden, but because they've run multiple races this year, I feel like it doesn't. They've run 4 races, so I'm going for it. Uh, Stuart Friesen is the wild card for me. So it kind of hedges because he's there. I don't think he's going to be there after Saturday though. Gets a victory if he can go out there and get a win. Lock himself into the playoffs after what has been a slow start to the year for him and his team. Considering I'm not a big fan of his either, the fact I picked him, but hey, he won there, so can't work against what has happened in the past in that sense. Truck Series at Texas TMS dump. Of what is it? So Enfinger to win. Duball wild card. How about you, Josh, for the trucks?
I mean, yeah, this is gonna be pretty interesting here and this weekend, but I think for me and the trucks, I'm gonna go with Ben Rhodes. I think this racetrack that he's been pretty strong at in the past, and yeah, I think he can come out of here with a win. He's always had good speed throughout his career in the Truck Series. So yeah, I'll go with him as the winner. And I think last or well 2 weeks ago at Atlanta, I picked Raja Karuth as a wild card. I'm gonna go with him again. I like how he's been performing here as of late in the Truck Series. He just needs a little bit more fortune. I think probably could have competed a little bit in the top 10 a little bit more at Atlanta, but I think Texas, not that they're similar tracks, but I think maybe some of that could carry over to Texas for sure. So I'm going to go with Raja as my wild card pick. You're on mute.
Yeah, so we can keep going now. You'll be up first here for Richmond. Brought up the Xfinity standings because Racing Reference gets updated by NASCAR, so they actually have that. Toyota Care 250, 43rd time they've run this particular race in the history of the Xfinity series. Uh, Blaine Perkins is in the 02. Smithley in the 4. 07 doesn't have a listed driver as of yet. Galding back in the 08. Derek Kraus will be filling in, or will be driving the 10 car this week. Some interesting choice there. Joe Graff Jr. back in the 19 to drive the Gibbs car along with the regulars Sammy Smith and John Hunter. Connor Mozak, another race in the 24. I think he might be running full time. I might be wrong, but whatever. Let's see. Chris Hacker, whoever the hell he is. I think he's a Truck Series driver. He's in the 38 for RSS. And go through Leland Honeyman in the 45. 53 doesn't have a listed driver yet. Timmy Hill is choosing to attempt to qualify in the 66 car at Richmond instead of running the truck, where he's had pretty good success so far this year relative to their budget. Former guest on the show, Dawson Cram, trying to get the Mike Harmon car into the field. And LeBay he'll be in the 91 this week, while Josh Williams makes his return. Kyle Weatherman trying to make the show with a brand new team, FRS Racing, and then Kyle Sieg in the 28. So you can go first there, Josh. I kind of know where you're gonna. I kind of have a feeling where you're gonna go, but I'll see if you actually go for it.
Yeah. Well, I was trying to see if there's anybody other maybe I can surprise you here with who I could go with, but well, I'm looking. Uh, you know, I'm gonna pick Josh Berry. That's who I'm gonna pick. I think he's done pretty well in short tracks in his career, and I think he can, as long as Junior Motorsports has good setup this weekend. I think Josh Berry can go out and win this race. He's done well at other short tracks throughout the series, and he's a short track guy in general. So yeah, I'll go with Josh Berry here this weekend. And I think my wild card, I'll go with.
Essentially,
Yeah,
13th on we have, or after 13th we can pick because I think there's like 25
yeah,
drivers that have run every race so far this
yeah.
year.
So far this year, yeah, and it's a lot to pick off of. But I'll go with Parker Retzlaff. I think he did pretty well in this race last year, so I'll go with him
For
this week.
Yep. So let's go and put that one in there. I forget what he looks like. He looks like Paperboy. I forget what
Doesn't he
he
look
looks
like
like off.
Squints from the
Yeah.
what's that one movie? The Sandlot? Doesn't he look like that kid?
Yeah, he does. Yeah. I was trying to figure out who he looked like or whatever because there's a kid, whatever, at one of the places that I have somebody there. There's a dude, a big burly dude, and he's very soft spoken. And his boss and all of them, they had come up with different people, and I was like, I'm trying to pick up who he looks like and what he looks like. And I'm like, he sounds and looks like Cleveland Brown. And once that started, it became a whole big thing about what do you call Family Guy, and all of us were going and doing that. So I have to figure out what Parker Retzlaff looks like. I haven't seen that dude in a while because, of course, he's driving for Jordan Anderson. So of course you're not going to be seen. Okay. So interesting. Uh, I thought you were going to go this way, but hey, that is definitely a pick. They've had a struggle so far this season. Early, of course, getting back used to working with Taylor Moyer, Barry going and getting that victory. I'm going to go with John Hunter Nemechek. It's Richmond is a Toyota track. It's a Toyota sponsored race. He won this race last year. Uh, honestly,
I was thinking it
I
too, but I wanted to be different.
yeah. Yeah, that's exactly what I was like, all right, you go John Hunter, I can go. I could have went Sammy Smith even, but I probably would have went Josh Berry otherwise, be a homer pick, but definitely a solid one. Um, my wild card choice for this week for Saturday will be I'm trying to look at points wise, yeah. Uh, so no, none of those are. Yeah, Kaz Grala's had a bad start to the year. Jesus. Um, well, he's in a Toyota, so I'm just gonna go with that. Uh, Kaz Grala had a rough start. There are solid cars, those Sam Hunt cars, essentially Gibbs satellite effort. So I'm gonna go with him as my wild card for uh, the race at Richmond. All right. So the final thing we do before final race to go over before we get into Josh's sim segment will be the Cup Series event. And that will be the Toyota Owners 400 at Richmond International Raceway. There's 37 for 40, so no problem. Anthony Alfredo will actually be back in the Cup Series driving the 78 for Blowjob McLeod, its team, and who's the other? Oh, Chandler Smith. So Chandler Smith will make his Cup Series debut this weekend after what was a disaster of a few days there at a couple of days at Daytona. So that'll be cool to see. Trying to see some of these other sponsors. Ross Chastain, they don't have a sponsor listed for what he's going to have. Brez Tree on Dillon, Gear Wrench on Harvick, Solomon Plumbing. It was that green and silver car for Keselowski, Blue Green Vacations for LaJoy, 3 Chi for Kyle Busch. Napa's back on the 9 with Josh Berry. Shingrix again for Denny Hamlin. Moen for Brian Blaney. Briscoe back in the Mahindra car. No sponsor, who cares? It's JJ Haley. Action Industries for AJ Allmendinger. Castrol Edge for Busher. Auto Owners Insurance for Truex. Ream will be back on the 20 for Bell. There'll be 2 Menards cars because Harrison Burton will be running a Menards Dutch Boy number 21. Logano, he ran that last week. Lidos will be on Bubba's car. Raptor will be back for Byron. Leaf Filter for Justin Haley. Quincy Compressor for Todd Gilliland. United Rentals will be back on the 41. Gagson and Jones are the same. Tyler Reddick will be running a Sirius XM number 45. Kraft Mac and Cheese on O. Richards' car. That doesn't matter. Nation's Guard will be on the 77. And then Daniel Suarez will be running his first start with Quaker State on his car. So there you go. I have to go back to Cup. Go to Richmond. Last year in the spring race, it was Denny Hamlin who used there was alternative strategies in that race. There was guys that were pitting. That was what ended up going on. There was 2 different divergent strategies going on. It looks like he only led the last 5 laps of the race. It was William Byron.
Yeah, William Byron had a big lead.
Yeah, and he was going. It was Will Byron. All the Gibbs cars were on the same strategy, and then Will Byron was on an alternative strategy because they didn't have a caution for the last 137 laps of the race. And he was able to pass. Hamlin was able to pass with 5 laps to go. Essentially, Blaney qualified on pole, led 128 laps, but only finished 7th. Byron led 122 laps, finished after starting 2nd, finished 3rd. Hamlin, Harvick, Byron, Truex, Larson, the top 5. Bell, Blaney, Bowman, Kyle Busch in the 18 car, and Dillon was the top 10. Chase Briscoe started 4th, finished 11th. Reddick, Keselowski, Clyde, Busher, Suarez, Logano, and Harrison Burton rounded out the top half of the field. Or actually, I should have stopped at Logano because he wasn't on the lead lap. Suarez was the last car on the lead lap last year. Only 2 cars fell out of the race. Cody Ware with a wreck and Greg Biffle driving that number 44 NY Racing dumpster fire. Kurt Busch had mechanical problems in that race. Had to go to the garage for a while there. So, all right. For me, who do I go with in regards to this race? They've only ran 1 race with this package on an oval. It was Phoenix. Harvick dominated that race. Or Harvick came through when it counted, and then they screwed him over. In terms of that race, I'm trying to go back to. I should go back to that race itself. We can go back to the standings from earlier this season. Do that. Go to Phoenix. which saw Byron get the victory, his second straight victory. Blaney was second. Reddick, Larson, Harvick, top five. Bill Briscoe, Kyle Busch, Bowman, and Josh Berry. So, yeah, Larson led the most laps in that race, and then, or virtually Byron and Larson led the whole entire thing. And then Harvick got past both of them, and it didn't matter. I'm going to go Harv. I'll go Harv this week. He did win the second race there at Richmond. It seems like the Stewart-Haas team is better on these short tracks. So I think Kevin Harvick goes out there, gets the victory. And my wild card selection, because we have to go through, so it's anybody outside, because we have 31, 32 drivers. So anybody outside of the playoff, or Bowman actually is, I mean, we're counting Will Byron in there because he's already won races. I mean, it's kind of a stretch. But you know what? I'm not going to do that. You know what? I'll just leave that alone. That's low hanging fruit there, but I'll go with Bubba. He needs a recovery run after a rough weekend at Coda. Didn't end up the way he wanted it to. Be a good place for him to go and get a recovery and get some good momentum back on his side. So to win, Bubba wild card. How about you, Josh?
Well, I mean, you took it right out of me there with Harvick because I was thinking about taking Harvick in this one. Um, I mean, it's gonna either be a Ford or it's gonna be a Toyota. I have a hard time thinking Chevy. I think it'd be interesting to see after the penalty to Hendrick Motorsports. I mean, obviously, it's only been since Phoenix, right? And
Yeah.
now they're at Coda and now at Richmond, so it hasn't been that long. So yeah, I'm gonna go with the Ford here. I'm gonna go with Joey Logano, taking his second win for the season. I mean, I think it's a Ford potential win here. I mean, obviously Toyota's been dominating, but yeah, I'll go with Logano. My wild card, I'm gonna go with another Ford. I'll go with Ryan Preece. He also hasn't had a great start to the year. Obviously, he had good performances in the past with the satellite teams for SHR and in Xfinity Series, and I think he has enough talent to be in Cup. People have been talking about him for years, and I think he can have a good performance here. Especially after basically telling the media that half the field deserves to get their ass whooped after what happened. Transpired at Coda with all the reckless, aggressive driving and all that stuff. So, got to back up that talk and get a good result here. So, yeah, I'll go with Ryan Preece as my wild card.
All right, so that's our picks. We'll see if they are any good in the previews. So, with all that, that means it's your time to shine, Josh. It is a sim segment. Let us know what's going on in the world of iRacing and gaming.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, this past weekend, it was the 12 hours of Sebring, which I forgot about and didn't compete in, but of course heard about it, during and afterwards. And Max Verstappen, of course, was preparing for it, and he was, competing in it, and I think preparing for it, I saw a clip of him having like an incredible start, and managed to like blow past half the field in one turn before they even got to the start finish line for the start of the race. So he figured out how to time the start and took off and had to basically went from like I think like 14th or something in the field to like fourth before they even reached turn one in Sebring. In I guess it wasn't the real or the virtual 24 or 12 hours of Sebring, but it was I think one of the like practice events or something like that. So that was pretty interesting move there. And of course, people were talking about him in sim racing because he was competing in that and his like identity as a sim racer. Is Max Verstappen really a sim racer that just happened to have a job as a Formula One driver, or is a lot of things? And of course, if you look at his profile on Team Redline, the sports team that he competes with, he's got like F1 race winner on his thing. He doesn't even have the fact that he's a two-time champion of the series, and that shows you just how like how interesting or not interesting, but I guess like how he wants to present himself when it comes to sim racing. And yeah, I think he might actually be a better sim racer than he is a racer, and we know how good he is as a Formula One racer. So we know that's what he really cares about. But I think in the 12 hours of Sebring, he wrecked or he got taken out, and I think people are saying it was because of net code and everything. And yeah, I think it's a tough result, of course, and it's tough to finish those races, and anything can happen. And with endurance racing, and just happen to get collected in part of that. So yeah, I think I've got to try that eventually, the 12 hours of Sebring and or the 24 hours of Le Mans. I think probably maybe my or Daytona actually. I think maybe why I didn't compete is because I've never raced Sebring in iRacing, so I'd be pretty raw to it and everything. I think probably try to plan out Daytona 24 hours next year in iRacing, try to compete in that one. So we'll see how that goes, or maybe some other endurance racing event to get some endurance, experience under the belt for a big 24-hour event or even a 12-hour event like Sebring. So we'll have to try to plan that out. As the year progresses and everything. Obviously, in the news part, sim racing, of course, there's the news about motorsports games. Uh, they announced that the IndyCar 2023 game will be officially delayed, to no one's surprise, and of course NASCAR 23 also getting delayed. So not surprising by any means, but of course IndyCar and NASCAR are both getting swindled by a scam company that is never, more than likely never going to produce a working product for racing games. So at least NASCAR, they can fall back on the fact that I think they have a heavy base of people who play iRacing, but of course not everybody has a sim rig or decent gaming computer to compete, and that's kind of where the console kind of bridges that gap. So they're gonna have to go back to the drawing board and figure out a way to get out of that contract or something, so that people who aren't on PC can play NASCAR games, and the same thing for IndyCar. So we'll have to see. But of course, I think they also did a report that they had a negative 35 or 35 million or something like that in losses this past year, or negative 35 in revenues. So very big amount of money, and it shows just how much of a scam it is. And probably the guy, the I don't know who owns it exactly. If I have to go back and see, but the CEO or whatever is probably just taking the money and left, and or doing whatever he wants to it. So yeah, shows just how committed they are to producing quality racing content and everything. And I think this past weekend, of course, did some Talladega, the '87 car. Probably should have streamed one of them. I was trying to just get comfortable with my field of view setup before I try to stream again, just so I can figure out the layout of where everything is now that I have 3 screens. So just trying to work on that, but I actually raced pretty aggressively. Just trying to stay up front a bunch, and we did. But then other times, just getting caught up in other people's mess. I had a race where I was running third with like a handful of laps to go, and then the guy in second tried to pull out the pass to go on the outside, and then he ducked back in line uh, behind the leader, and then the leader and him both went into the wall, and then I went to the right and I tried to go around it, but I got collected in it, so then I got taken out of that. But the voice chat was pretty hilarious because the guy that was the leader was an Australian and he didn't like it, and he just said, "All right, I see how it is. Let's. I'm going to file a protest to iRacing," and then people were hating on him because like he's like, well, you're not really deserving. He's like, well, fine, I don't care. So that's how it goes sometimes in iRacing with getting taken out and stuff. And then I think there was another result where I just finished third and probably should have had a chance to win if would have timed the run correctly off coming off the backstretch onto turn 3 and 4 onto the front stretch of Talladega. And I mean, it's really interesting because like the last couple of years, Talladega, you could have gone, held it wide open throughout the entire race course and, not dipped below 216 miles an hour in the corners and topped out at, 225. But now, I guess with the tire model, they've made it so that basically, like, if you're not in a pack, or if you're not the leader and you're in the draft, that you basically need to get out of the gas for most of the corner or the first part of the corners. So you actually have to lift. You top out at 220 and then lift and then slow back down to like 205 before getting back on the gas and everything. And then if you're on the bottom, you can be a little bit more consistent with it. But in the top, you really have to manage the tires because if you're on the top, the tires do heat up a little bit more, and then you have to back off a little bit more to cool them down and mount up a charge. But you can make up a lot of time on the outside, especially when the inside line gets jammed up at Talladega in the 87 car. So it's a lot of fun doing that, and of course, try to hopefully do again later in the year. But I think this week, iRacing. Let's see what the schedule is for Oval. Obviously, they got Richmond Speedway, Richmond Raceway on the Cup Series side. 87s are at Chicagoland, so that might be interesting because Chicagoland's a very worn out racetrack at this point. The car's late model stock tour is at the Las Vegas Motor Speedway Bull Ring this week. Gen 4 is at Charlotte Motor Speedway, so that might be interesting there, especially Gen 4 Charlotte, credible finishes, with Jimmy Johnson over Bobby Labonte in 2005. A lot of good racing that happened when, Gen 4 era of Cup at Charlotte Motor Speedway. So that might be in. Plus, that one also has a lot of tire wear, so that might be interesting. The IndyCar Dallara IR18 Las Vegas Motor Speedway, they're racing there this week in iRacing. Road side of things, MX5 at Lime Rock Park, always a good one to do. Indy Pro 2000s at Okayama International Circuit, always a good circuit as well. Compete on there. Ferrari, Ferrari 488 GT3 at Road America. And also iRacing has the Renault Clio, so they have the Clio Cup now in iRacing. They're racing at Monza this week. The Endurance 45-minute challenge is at, or 25-minute endurance racing for car class series. They're competing at Lime Rock Park this week. You have Formula V also at Okayama Circuit, so that should be pretty entertaining there. The Formula 4 is also at Okayama Circuit, so got a lot of low class open wheel racing at Okayama Circuit. You've got Ferrari 488 GT3s at Laguna Seca. You got the IndyCar. Trying to find Formula or open wheel. Yeah, where is open wheel C? Can I find that? Open wheel C. I don't know. Can't find it. There's so many series here. And I don't even really race that series anymore. I'm trying to find it, but yeah, there's so many series here on iRacing as well. And maybe they're on a break this week, but yeah, so many series to compete in, regardless of you're in iRacing, road or oval or even dirt, which we didn't even talk about. Doesn't really compete dirt that much, but street stocks. I think if you want to do like beginner level dirt racing, you can go to the old USA International Speedway with the Legends cars, dirt Legends cars, sprint cars at Kokomo, late models, super late models at the dirt track at Charlotte. So there's plenty of variety on iRacing to race on. Whether oval, road, dirt, or dirt road. So plenty of action across the board on iRacing, and of course, once I figure out my setup again with the layout, because you have to have the game is on the screen, and then got the window for the stream, so I can control everything for audio input and when to cut and when not to cut, and see if anybody commented on it. I have to have that in a separate window, and so I think I'm just going to have it in a window on top of one of the screens in the lower left corner or something, where it's on the cockpit, so it's not actually obstructing the view outwards, but it's I guess like from the view of the cockpit, it's like kind of on the dash, like something on top of the dash where it's sitting on there, so it's not obstructing the window view outside the cockpit, inside the game. So it's not like it's obstructing anything. So I think that's what I'll go with, and try to start streaming again. And actually, I found out that when I was playing around with things, found out that the setup, I guess like you got to line up the screen so that you get the center screen of that where you see the steering wheel view, and it's a little, I guess, too wide for the the whole view, but I think you only really need to see the center when you view out the window where I'm driving. So yeah, that's what I'll probably do, and then guess maybe at some point this week or at the end of the week try to stream one of the series that I feel good about competing in. So probably the Cup car or the Gen 4 Cup car or something like that at Charlotte, and then maybe one of the road races with um, the MX-5, the Mazda MX-5, or one of the open wheel ones at Okayama, because I like that track as well. So we'll see. But of course, yeah, streaming at Twitch TV/USailor2, and go in there and follow that stream. Of course, my personal Twitter at JP Huffine, and you can see everything that I talk about, and all my takes on racing and everything, or see what I'm interested in on the likes page. You can go on there and see that at JP Huffine. And of course, we'll share the show and everything, share the streams on there as well. And then, of course, YouTube channel at Gripster Podcast on YouTube. Go in there and like, comment, and subscribe on our videos, and hopefully we'll have video out a little bit sooner this week, and have that out for everyone to go on and watch or listen, and passively watch in the background. So yeah, that's it for me this week. Of course, always glad to be back on and talk about it with you. Of course, this was a pretty volatile weekend of racing at COTA and NASCAR, and of course, got to be able to digest it and everything. So yeah, always glad to be able to do it every week.
Absolutely, man. Wouldn't do it with anyone else unless you're on vacation, you're working, and then we have to find a sub. But otherwise, this is the deal right here. In year 4, 5,000 downloads. So thanks to all of you who download the show and listen to us and support our deal here. I'm at Philip G. Matthew on Twitter. You can find us at Gripstrip Pod on Twitter. Josh mentioned the Gripstrip Podcast YouTube page where the video feed is. I'm the executive producer in terms of the audio, so try to be better than the last couple of weeks. Try to get it out the same week. It would be a novel concept. Yeah, that's we're I'm trying to we're anywhere that you can get podcasts. You can get the Gripster podcast, and then also for people like for some of the people, for Aaron Harper, who's has his pod, for the Grid Talk crew. They'll be doing the Australian Grand Prix qualifying and the race review, but it'll be pretty early in the morning East Coast time. If you're a West Coast person, then probably a little better for you to watch the race. Listen to them. They've supported us and the Monkey Seat podcast as well. So shout out to all them fine people. With that, this is the end of episode 162. We will be back next week for episode 163 of the Gripster podcast to go over all the events that took place. NASCAR, Richmond in Texas, IndyCar Texas, Formula One, 2 and 3, along with supercars at Albert Park. And then we'll get into MotoGP and NHRA next week in the roundup. So get in all that and come back for that. So for Josh, I'm Phil. Thanks for listening and supporting us here on the Gripster Podcast. Take care. God bless and goodbye.